A court hearing is currently underway in Moscow to decide if Russian opposition leader Alexei Navalny will have to spend the next several years in jail. Here are the latest pictures of Navalny in the courtroom. He's been in detention, of course, for violating probation since he returned to Russia from Germany, where he had been recovering from a poison attack that he blamed on Kremlin forces. Now, outside of the court, dozens of Navalny's supporters have been detained by police. Moscow correspondent Emily Sherwin is standing by outside of that courthouse where the hearing is taking place. And Emily, the Navalny case has, of course, sparked massive anti-government protests in Russia in recent days. What is the situation there right now?
Well, starting this morning, some of the roads leading up to the court where Navalny's hearing is taking place were closed. There's a huge police presence out in force around the court as well. And we saw a few hours ago around 100 protesters or supporters of Alexei Navalny had gathered here just across the street from where I'm standing. And then most of them were very quickly detained. We've now heard from independent monitors that just under 100 people were detained here in Moscow today. And of course, that comes after mass protests that took place over the weekend, where thousands of people took to the streets in Moscow and in other cities across Russia as well.
What is Navalny facing in court today, Emily?
Well, Russia's prison service has asked for a suspended sentence that he has for a fraud case that was opened against him in 2013 to be turned into real jail time. They say that he broke the conditions of his parole. His defense in court has now been arguing that actually he couldn't have checked in with his parole officers at all because he was in Germany being treated and in a coma after having been poisoned, as Navalny himself says, by FSB agents of the Russian security forces. And we could today see Alexei Navalny getting several years in prison. People are talking about it being up to 3.5 years in prison or perhaps house arrest. We'll have to wait and see what the court today decides.
Okay, and if that does indeed happen, he has a lot of supporters out there. We've seen them out on the streets, as we've mentioned. Talk with us a little bit about the resolve among those who are supporting him, the current opposition movement in Russia to the establishment, President Vladimir Putin.
There does seem to be almost a new energy among many in the opposition here in Russia, at least from what I've seen at these protests today, at the protests over the weekend, and at the protests last week. Just now I was speaking to some of Alexei Navalny's supporters who came out and who just came back here despite the arrests that we've been seeing here and at the nearest metro station as well. And one young woman I spoke to said that Alexei Navalny was not afraid to come back to Moscow, and so she also has resolved not to be afraid either to come out today despite the mass arrests that we've been seeing of peaceful protesters. And I think these protests over the past few weeks and the support of Alexei Navalny are a threat to the Kremlin now, especially because many of the protesters that I have been speaking to over the last few weeks also have been saying, this is about much more than Alexei Navalny. Actually, this is about the accusations of corruption that he's leveled at the ruling elite, including at Vladimir Putin himself. And they've been telling me that they want to live in a different country, a more democratic country, a country without corruption. And so it seems that this is about much more than just the trial going on behind me.
Emily Sherwin in Moscow, thank you.